Welcome to the Elevate the Vibe podcast, bringing you juicy convos with thought leaders discussing the wild world of parenting.
Happy Wednesday, Vibe Hive. It's your favorite day of the week. It's your favorite new episode of Elevate the Vibe. I'm your host, Jason Berlin, and with me is my beautiful co-host, Katie Berlin.
What up, Vibe Hive? We are here with a solo episode today to talk about the topic of sleepovers. Now, as kids growing up in the 80s and 90s, sleepovers and 80s, 90s, 2000s, sleepovers were definitely just a part of the normal kid culture.
It was something I looked forward to every weekend. I always had a friend who, we would go hang out with, get into trouble, watch a movie I wasn't supposed to watch, eat some food I wasn't supposed to eat, and oh man, it was glorious.
And as kids, it's part of the fun and excitement of hanging out with your friends. Sometimes there could be sleepovers where it was maybe it was for a sporting event or a sleepaway camp or a roller land lock-in type of thing. I remember those were pretty common growing up.
Or a new video game came out and you went to your friend's house to play the new video game.
Sometimes it wasn't just, sometimes it wasn't just a friend's house. Sometimes it was some other event around a sleepover situation where tons of kids would get together to do it. And as the years have, continued to move along and I'm not a child anymore. Now I am still a child mentally, but physically I look old. But
Come on, Lou.
Now that we have children of our own, this is a topic that I do think about. And you might be thinking, if you have listened to episodes in the past, you're like, wait, your kids are 3 and 9 months. Why would you be thinking about this? To give a little context, when I was growing up, my parents were divorced, and every week I would split time between both homes, which means from a very young age, I was used to not spending the night in my own home, in my own bed. I had my very first sleepover with my best friend at my best friend's house. His name was Eric, when I was 5 years old. I lost my first tooth there. His mom gave me $10. I was sleeping in their guest room. I remember this, and it was fun, and I didn't feel uncomfortable because I was very used to sleeping in two homes. So it was normal to me, whereas some kids, they're not doing sleepovers till many years later. So as a young child, I had my first sleepover when I was 5 years old. Now, yes, we have a 3-year-old, and do I think that maybe he'll be doing sleepovers in 2 years? Probably not. I was probably on the younger side, but it's something in the horizon. And Jason and I talk about this, and we do have a little bit of different view on sleepovers in general.
I mean, I'm not for nor against them. I mean, I feel like it's a case-by-case basis. It's you feel like you got to really vet the parents hard. They've got to be good friend. Your kid's going to be good friends with their kids. And then, you do your best to vet the parents and meet them and see what they're about. And, but you never know what goes on behind closed doors. So nowadays, especially, there's all sorts of crazy, weird things that go on in houses that we never knew about when we were little kids because we weren't exposed to that sort of information. But I'd say I'm a little more skeptical now than I was.
And I'm definitely skeptical. I have had my fair share of interesting situations arise at sleepovers. Thankfully, nothing too horrendous, but I've just always been exposed to something that maybe my little young mind wasn't ready for yet, or I was just placed in a situation where, even as independent and as exposed to different scenarios that I was as a young child, when you're a young kid and you're in someone else's home and it's someone else's parents, someone else's family, someone else's rules, you're definitely out of your element. And there's the thought of building independence that way. But I also think there are many other ways to build independence besides just being forced to go to someone else's house. On the flip side of this too, thinking of having someone's child at my home gives me massive anxiety, or the kids spending the night in my house, because then I am responsible for the most important person in someone else's life. And I have the utmost, well, okay, I think I do like a pretty decent job. Maybe I'm, you know what I mean? I'm not the most amazing parent in the world. We all have our flaws, but like I like I would probably be like peeking through and like checking on them. Like, do you need a water? Do you need like? I would be like a annoying ass helicopter mom of the other kid, because I would be terrified that that child would be uncomfortable for 5 seconds, and that they wouldn't, want to stay and be like, I actually want to go home. And then I would feel horrible, and I'd have to call the parents and be like, hey, your kid wants to go home.
I mean, there's just a laundry list of liabilities now. It's like you're just inviting all sorts of drama into your house if you invite a little kid. And like, you have 3 or 4 kids. Like, if they hear something at your house, you're on the hook for it. If they have an alcoholic drink at your house, you're on the hook for it. It's like, man, the liabilities are huge.
Well, and also going to the alcoholic drink aspect of it, I also toy with the idea of, is there a specific age where maybe I'd be okay with sleepovers? So I didn't mention this, but I think I'm going to be a hard no on sleepovers and draw a line in the sand of like, Jason and I obviously have to discuss this. He's giving me a look.
You're going to make our kids so uncool.
But probably there's going to be a lot of other parents that feel this way.
It's true.
And the reason now that all of us as adults who are, in our 30s, late 20s, 30s, 40s feel this way is because when we were growing up, some weird fucking shit would happen. And we saw it and experienced it. And now we're like, hell to the no. It's not just ice cream and a board game. It's some weird fucking shit going down. And now as adults, we know we can't protect you from everything, but there are, it's like, do you go swimming in the alligator infested pond, or do you just go swimming in the pool?
Well, that's why we stay the fuck away from Florida right there.
Except when we visit my parents. Shout out to my parents. What's up? But if you are a parent and you're somewhat on the fence about this, we did come up with a list of pros and cons for sleepovers. Now, pros. Number 1, kids have fun. It's undeniable. Sleepovers can be really fun. It's, they can be a blast. 2, it's definitely an inclusive event for kids. Like, they're hyped about it. They feel like they're a part of the little crew.
Yeah, it builds bonds, strengthens your relationships and friendships.
That's number 3. It definitely builds friendships. And number 4, it does build independence from parents. You're exposed to other homes, other cultures, other ways of life. It's not just sleeping in your cozy bed at, your favorite temperature with your favorite blankie and nightlight.
Yeah.
Now, cons. 1, for parents, this could be enough for some parents. It can be a big one. It can be very disruptive to your child's sleep and schedule. And for some people, like myself, when they don't get their sleep and their sleep is disrupted, it is like sayonara.
It's the warpath. Stay away.
Yes. So, number 1, sleep and schedule can be disruptive, and that could have like a lasting effect for 2 or 3 days. Like, depending on how flexible your kid is around stuff like that, that could be like a nightmare for you for like a few days after. Number 2, we touched on this a little bit, but there's this pressure to appease the people in your surroundings of the environment you're in. So if you're normally someone that wouldn't eat certain foods, but the parents are serving it, and it's going to make you feel sick, but you just kind of want to do it because you feel like you have to, like that sort of thing. Like, this is a very mild example, but it's just, it's a little bit like peer pressure, but it's not just peer pressure. It's like parent pressure in a way.
Well, what's like the example that you gave me earlier about?
Yes. So there's an example that I heard someone tell a story about where they said they were at their friend's house and their friend's parents had a rule where you had to eat everything on your plate. And this person's family didn't have that rule. And this young person, he was like, "No, I'm not going to eat everything on the plate." And the dad was like, "You're going to sit there until you finish it." And they sat there for 4 hours. They sat there for 4 hours. This is a little kid. And then eventually the dad was like, "I'm not doing this. Like, you need to call your parents and go home." And like,
Weird.
yeah, like how weird is that? And how awkward is that? And what am I going to do? Ask some parents, like, what's every rule that you have under the sun for your household to make sure my kid doesn't have to sit and have a stare down with you for 4 hours over not finishing 4 pieces of cauliflower?
Right.
Like, yeah, no.
Very weird.
Yeah. Number 3, which Jason and I both touched on this, usually at a sleepover, now this isn't totally a con, could navigate into con, is that kids are usually exposed to something devious, or they're usually fiddling around in the world of mischievous activities at sleepovers. Sometimes it's harmless, sometimes it's not harmless.
I mean, I had my cousin sleep over at my house once, and we watched this movie with Christopher Lambert called Night Moves, and it was so scary that she and I were just freaked out like all night. We couldn't sleep. We were both like, "Oh my God, like we can't believe we watched that. Like that was so scary." And like we still like remember that to this day about how much we were freaked out by watching this R-rated movie. We were too young to see it for sure, and it was like I still remember it was scary as hell. So it's just, I don't know. I mean, I guess I was like 17. I'm just kidding. I was like 11 or so. So.
Or like, what if parents have guns in the home and the kids want to check them out?
Yeah.
And, it's just like, are you going to grill someone about that? Like, how do you have them locked up? How do you have them stored? Does your kid know the lock? Like,
Yeah,
what I mean?
That's the kind of shit that happens, and that's a very valid reason to never let your kids go on a sleepover right there.
Right, yeah.
Guns are terrifying.
Yeah. And then the last one, this one is like the big granddaddy reason. And I don't say granddaddy as in like a creepy way, but like granddaddy is that there can be a lot of sexual assault that takes place behind closed doors at a sleepover. It could be between children. It could be between siblings and a kid. It could be parents. I do my little scrolling on TikTok, and I've come across some people who have hard nose on sleepovers. And if you look at the comments, there can be like thousands of comments of people talking about their experiences and even saying like, I trusted my parents, like their own parents or like their own, mother, father-in-law. That was the only person that I allowed my child to have a sleepover at their house. And you know what? That's where my child experienced abuse. And it's just like, you think but you just never know. And it's a big one. You don't want to live in fear forever and keep your child from doing everything. Unless you're me, then yes, that's what you want to do. But to me, it seems like more often than not, this takes place during those situations. And it's not necessarily something that very young children are equipped to be able to speak out and handle.
Right.
And speak up for themselves. So there are 2 articles that I came across. One that was someone saying the reasons for sleepovers, and another where there were 2 articles that I came across that I'll link in the show notes, where one article was someone pro sleepover saying, you can't really protect your kids from everything. You need to use your best judgment and don't let them miss out on this fun opportunity and an opportunity to build independence in their life. And then there's another article that was a little bit more on the this is not something that you should opt for. But if you do, they gave a recommendation of a way to sort of arm your child with language and capability to protect themselves against something that they don't want to be exposed to. And I'm going to read off of this right now. So it's called the 3 R's. Number 1 is to recognize that nobody should touch you. Number 2 is to resist if someone is doing something you don't like. And number 3 is report if an adult tells you something you're not comfortable with. Now, in theory, this sounds great, but if your kid is like 7 years old, do you really expect them to like go through this process and like resist? And it's just like, do you even put your young child in that situation? Now, if you have like a 15 or a 16-year-old, this is where I feel like I'm a hard no on a young age, but maybe as they get older, it's like, okay, they have the physical capability to defend themselves. They have the mental capability to understand what they feel is appropriate, inappropriate. And you want to show your child that you trust them to make good decisions with their life. So, do you give them that leeway? And this is where I think maybe that, like, those 3 R's make sense for kids that are a little bit older, but I think with young kids, I can't get on the boat. I can't get on the sleepover boat right now.
So we're going to open this up to you, parents. Are you for or are you against sleepovers? Why don't you drop us a DM, leave us a comment on our latest post. We'd love to hear what you think about it.
Peace.